everybody, it is Romania Black, and we're on episode 65 of Monster. No big deal, just like 10 episodes left. So, yes, when we last left our crew, some things happened. Baby's dead. Baby is dead. Peter is confronting Johan. Johan is looking super mysterious, seems to want to know where Bonaparte is because they've said, oh, Bonaparte is alive, just so we can clarify. We find out that the Opie mofo is actually Bonaparte's son, or so we think. And so there's all these like twisted familial webs. There's all this stuff going on. It's pretty crazy. And it's as crazy as it should be since we're on episode 65 and we're getting towards the last act and getting down to the nitty gritty. So one would expect this to be the case, but I'm really excited to see where all this goes and how we handle it. So there's that. I do have a couple comments I want to talk about before we start. I Swallow Apple Seeds talked about how Tenma's actual birthday in the show is on January 2nd of 1958. So I don't know how old that makes Tenma. I'm not a math person. This is what, 95? So 95 to 85, 85 to 75, 75 to 65. So he's like 30 something, almost 40. There we go. Does that make this a potential old man Yowie? It'll depend how it ends, probably. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So thank you for pointing that out. I also liked SF Master had a really cool comment because I'll be honest, we're entering the final act of this series. The entire time, I have been expecting like something supernatural, something like that's sort of, you know, away from the realm of reality, like most anime do, and it hasn't happened, and that's been a very pleasant surprise. And I like that SF Master's kind of like, yeah, there aren't at this point any giants or wizards, or the monsters are humanity themselves, and that's kind of scarier than any supernatural force that could come about it, right? It's just the fact that this is how humanity can be, and everyone has that capability of being a monster, and it's terrifying. So yeah, I really kind of like that. I keep expecting in the final actor to be like one big twist, but so far no. And if it stays realistic, I'll be really happy. If there's some weird twist, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it, right? And then H Banana 7, we were talking about that, you know, we haven't seen Baby really since the Turkish fires that have been going on in the Turkish district. And H Banana 7 was like, does anybody know where Heckles is? And I was like, I forgot all about Heckles. Probably trying to steal rugs. Probably out there trying to steal rugs, if I were to guess. But who knows? I thought that was really, really funny. So yeah. But that's really exciting, right? I am excited to dive into this episode and see what we get. At this point, it's like all bets are off. Like it could just go crazy, and what do we have to expect, you know? So I'm not ready to review the manga yet for volume 8. I know we only have 2 volumes of the manga left. I'll be honest, volume 9 is freaking huge. There's either gonna be lots of exposition or there's gonna be stuff left out, but I do not want to know. So please, I've got a new microphone. Sorry, as I was speaking into the microphone. I do not want to know. I want to be surprised. And after episode 74 is over, the following week, I will be doing a review of the last manga volume, all the differences, all the things left out or possibly expanded upon, and then doing like a character tier, and then talking about favorite episodes, kind of doing like a little mini recap. That's going to be after Monster is over. So that'll be the following week before we start the series that's going to come after that, which will be Pluto, which is the other Urasawa work. So yes, I'm super excited. Thank you all for the comments. Episode 63 was like probably my least favorite episode in the series. One of my least favorites, because it was just like, there wasn't anything bad about it, but not a lot of stuff happened. And I was like, dang it, we're getting close to the end. And then episode 64 just slapped you in the face and said, gotcha, here's all this shit going on. You're like, oh, okay. Well, Monster, good on you. So yes, I'm super, super excited. So we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right in to episode 65 of Monster. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. I'm probably going to wait until I at least get comments for this next episode, but then I'm going to have to dive right into the next episode 66, because oh my god, so it's like we're right back to Roberto. I swear, everyone that gets in a threatening manner towards Eva has to go. I just love that it's like, whether Timma wants to be or not, he is literally Eva's white knight. Like, she just can't escape him. And now they're at the point where both of them can kind of move on, and he's still saving her. It's like, oh my god, which, you know, kudos to Eva for going there and being like, no, I want to find this shit out. But I'm just like, and Kristoff, I'm glad I don't have to call him Opie Mofo anymore. I can actually give him a name, Kristoff. Good for him. Glad that we're getting him a name in this. Oh my gosh, there's a lot to talk about with this episode, which surprised me, because anytime, like I said during the reaction, anytime this series does like a recap moment at the beginning, you can tell they're obviously tailoring the episode to end in a certain fashion. They're manipulating it to fit the time portion that they have, which is fine. But I thought when we had that recap, I'm like, oh, this episode's not going to have a lot into it. It did. There was quite a lot, actually. A lot going on. I was like, okay, cool. And we get so much happening in this episode, which is great. But I'm just like, Monster, how can you leave us on a cliffhanger like that? And I feel like from now on, every episode's going to be a cliffhanger. It's just going to end that way, and there's nothing we can do about it. But what can we do? So, oh my god. Well, let's talk about this episode. So, okay, the people that we have, I'm going to move White Working a little bit closer. And I've tested out the microphone that's over here. It's very tempting for me to look over at the microphone here, and then the camera is here. It's like, where do I look? And then up here is like the screen, so it's just like there's places I can look everywhere. But Lungay, I'm sure that Lungay has moved on from Lipsky. I'm sure that interview's over. He's found out all the information that he needed. He's already moved on. Someone in the comments said, like, why do you keep saying that Lungay is behind everybody, like one step behind? Like, he clearly is moving ahead and finding information. That is a very good point. And that's kind of, when I say Lungay is a step behind everybody, I guess I don't mean in terms of reality, but in terms of, like, as we, the audience, are finding him. We see almost Lungay as an afterthought, even when he's not. So that is a very good point. So I'm glad you brought that up. Lungay, for all we know, has figured the entire thing out. He's already figured out the JOHAN'S plan. He knows everything, and he's gonna be waiting at the finish line, being like, hey, I figured it out already. My vacation's over. And we're like, where have you been, Lungay? We've been trying to find these answers this whole time. Thank you. But yeah, so what can we do, you know? But yeah, so Lungay we don't know about. Lipsky we don't know about. He's off in the middle of nowhere. Grimmer, I'm just positive that we've not seen the last of Grimmer. I'm hopeful. Grimmer is a point of contention for me, because on the one hand, I want to see Grimmer again. On the other hand, I don't want Grimmer to die. So I'm like, it's such a double-edged sword. It's like, you want to see a character, but the chances of you seeing that character increases their chances of dying in the show. So you're like, what do I do? It's like a monkey's paw. Like, you just know the show's gonna be like, oh, you wanted to see him again. And I was like, not like that. No, show, don't do this to me. Please. I'm also amazed that Peter didn't die this episode. Full on thought that he was going to. Full on thought that was going to be a thing. But no, he's alive for now. Glad he is. I'm glad Nina didn't kill him because of a couple reasons, but mainly because we need more exposition from him. Tell us the things, please. So yeah, we don't know about them. And then Bonaparte, we believe, is alive, and JOHAN'S looking for him, but we don't know where he's at. He's the guy that's kind of the originator of all this, the original Frankenstein, the original devil in all this. Where is he at? And I think JOHAN'S looking for him. So there's that. But this episode was called JOHAN'S Footprints, meaning that his footprints are all over town. All the roads connect back to JOHAN some way or another, whether he likes it or not. And it's rather interesting. We're going to talk about JOHAN and his input on the murders this episode and what that means, but got past the OP in this. So I think it's really good character building for the two guards that were hired by Peter, because I could see in another show, if we hadn't got the character development that we did with them, there would be a large question of, well, why don't they just kill Nina? Or why don't they just kill Peter? Because you could argue they had lots of opportunities to do so in this episode, but the show is very intelligent in that it lets us, the audience, know that these guys really are not gonna go above and beyond to work for Peter, because they kind of are a little bit mad that Peter's, sort of deceived them so far, and they just seem like they're kind of along for the ride to see who's going to benefit them the most, and that kind of works to the show's advantage. Again, lots of use of shadows in this episode, like the shadows coming from the door. The way that hotel rooms are positioned in this series is so fascinating, because it's little details with the setting that you normally don't think about but have an impact in this show. Like the way the hotel room was set up where Nina was at, okay? In the hotel room that Eva was in back in the one hotel, when the door opens up, like all the times that Martin's seen her, all the times that Ryan Reichwein has seen her, the door opens up to Eva's room. She's straight ahead on the couch. There's a table with the booze, and she's in full view, right? In the hotel where her and Martin are staying at, the beds are in full view there, right? All that good stuff. Here, in this episode specifically, when you open up the door, the way that the hotel room works, and you've seen this in hotel rooms if you've ever been in one, this particular one has the bathroom here, a wall, and the beds on the other side. So there's kind of these little nooks and crannies and vantage points where Nina could hide if she wanted to. So they have to come in with extra caution, but she was in the bathroom. And so for a second, I thought they'd walk by her and then she'd escape out the door. But instead, she challenges both of them and is like, I want to go to Peter. I want to find answers. Take me to your leader. I like that Nina this whole time, every time she gets somewhat captured, she kind of wants to stick around to find out answers, and then she doesn't get the answers that she wants. And it's like, damn it, Nina, I feel for you, girl. But I really like the way this scene was handled, and Nina proving she can handle herself. What's interesting is that her and Johan are intimidating on very different levels. Johan is intimidating by what we don't see. His lack of emotion and his calm demeanor makes him terrifying. And with Nina, her passion and how forward she is, and she's like, no, I'm going to get this, makes her terrifying in return. So it's interesting, right? I really like the way that it's handled in this episode. And they're like, and she knows who Peter is, and she went. Okay, so I think one of the better scenes done in this episode, again, there's a lot going on in this episode, is the scene with the family. That was such a sad scene. The way that Urasawa, when we saw Timma with all of them in Milan, back just a few episodes ago, they were so smiling and happy, and there was a sense of family. And since Milan has died, it is just drained everything from that family, which makes Milan's death have that much more impact, and it makes you feel like, God, it's such a waste. Like Timma telling him, don't throw your life away because you're not the only one being impacted. It's all of these people that's your family that are impacted by your death as well, which is pot calling the kettle black, because Timma repairs the family and keeps those kids. Timma in a lot of ways works like Grimmer with Milosh. Grimmer kept Milosh from turning into the darkness and becoming a monster. Grimmer did. Timma keeps these two kids from becoming monsters by showing them that the path of revenge is just a vicious cycle and don't repeat that. Milan didn't want that for you. But then it's like pot calling the kettle black, because Timma's about to go and he's not getting revenge by any means, but he's still furthering the cycle by going after Johan. And it's like, Timma, you have your own family that you've created too. You just want to shake him. You just want to shake Timma and be like, what are you doing? And you get what he's doing, but it's just like, But I really like the way they handle this. The police coming in, it's very impersonal. It's very informal. You don't even see the faces of the policemen. All their caps are pushed down where it's just frowns and noses. You don't get to see the eyes. And the eyes are windows to the soul. So if you can't see their eyes, it's like, But then, yep. And so they just shove them aside, everything, right? And make them get out of the way. And it's so sad because you can see the kids encountering all this. It's so sad. I really hope that Milosh seems to be, they keep on the right path and they don't become hell-bent on revenge like they seemed to be before Tenma got to them, right? Because it's so sad. You just see this idea of revenge And the two kids, like these two kids that were just like throwing a paper airplane an episode ago and dreaming of moving on to another world, there were suddenly their hearts are filled with hatred because of what's happened to Milan. And Tenma, Tenma could have said, he could have easily, but we know Tenma's not going to because that's his character, but he could have easily been like, yes, revenge, that's the way to go. But instead he's like, no, 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 no. That's not what Milan wanted, and you're just going to end up going down the same path as Milan. And the fact that he hugs the two kids, very similar to how Grimmer hugged Milosh, and that compassion, that embrace, that love is able to deter them from a path of violence and a path of hatred. And so then, the question is, you have Tenma and Grimmer who use love to kind of detract from hatred. And you're like, maybe if Johan was hugged more as a kid, could this have been avoided? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows, right? Who knows? It's more complicated than that, obviously, but there is something so simple about what Tenma and Grimmer do to help cure these kids of their hatred and keep the cycle of violence from going. And he's just like, revenge begets revenge, and someone has to stop it. And Milan was trying to be, Tenma, by the end of this scene, kind of feels like he's picking up the torch from Milan, being like, Milan was trying to stop the cycle. Milan was sacrificing himself to stop the cycle, and it didn't work. He's like, someone has to stop the cycle, and it's going to be me. What is so frustrating out of all of this is this concept that, we've come to find out over the course of the series that it's a little bit more complicated than we thought, right? That Johan's plan, whatever it is, if there's even a plan, I don't even think there's a plan at this point. I think Johan just puts an idea in people's heads and they run with it and make up their own assumptions. Whereas Johan really doesn't have a plan or an assumption. He's just trying to find Bonaparte. I think that's the only concrete thing he has going. And that he's, kind of keeping Nina an arm's length away from that for reasons. I feel like we kind of thought coming into this that Johan was like this mastermind in terms of A, B, and C, and it's really not the case, but Tenma is still on that wavelength. So that can be frustrating watching because you're like, is Tenma killing Johan really going to solve the problem? Maybe, maybe not. Is that going to fix the system? Maybe not. Maybe. We don't know. Don't know. Don't have a clue, right? We just don't know. So that's going to be the big question, right? But Tenma giving those kids a hug, it's like, damn it. I hate that he like thanks them and then goes. And when they're like, what are you going to do? And he's just like, Tenma doesn't give an answer because he knows what he's going to do. It's basically the same thing as Milan, just on a bigger scale. But yeah, and then the police are taking out all his belongings and leaving, and that's when they find out that Baby's been murdered. I like that the one detective comes in and he's trying to be very quiet, and he's like, hey, Baby was killed. And they're like, oh, we gotta go now, right? Again, the thing about Baby being killed, it was that random woman, and we don't know who she's involved with or what's going on, but interesting. Also want to point out, in the background, most of our guys here have like their eyes covered and we can't see. There is a rando man that walks by with black sunglasses on in the middle of the broad daylight, going through his house with sunglasses on and his hat. He's the only guy with eyes that we see. Is this something we should make note of in the background? I don't know. It feels weird. Is that Bonaparte? No. No, probably not, but it's funny. And then Tenma following Kristoff to the art gallery where he believes Johan is supposed to be. Of course Johan would like make his way into this art house penthouse. Also, Kristoff is such a bitch. Like just walking by that door with his keys slinging, being like, yeah, here I come. I'm like, what? Mm-mm. So yeah. And then go into this big giant art gallery, which I guess, you know what? Johan is a man of taste and a man of style. So him hanging out in this studio apartment that has all of these books and these art galleries and the hat sitting on the bust, it feels very artistic. It feels very Johan. Why are we not surprised? Why are we not surprised, you know? But that shot, though, of Kristoff just sitting there in front of the books and everything, it seems like Johann always has a seat. Johann has a seat, a table, and book space, right? Oh, Johann, what can we do? He paints a great picture, right? And then the fact that Eva shows up beforehand. Oh, my God. So, yeah, then finding Peter. Honestly, the tension of this scene alone, where she remembers him taking her with him, and her voice acting, where you can just feel this haggard breathing, and she's just like, you can just feel how nervous she is, intense. And it takes Nina a lot of self-control to not kill him. And I'm glad she doesn't, because it's like, no, he has more information he can give us. Do not. But have y'all noticed that every time Johann, when he gets done talking to somebody, it's like they've been drained of their energy? Like both Wolf and Peter, it's like a vampire. The life has been drained out of them after Johann has left. And maybe Peter has been poisoned by the wine. What the thing that's so disturbing is we don't know what Johann told him. We don't know everything Johann told him. We don't know what happened. He just looks like the life's been zapped out of him. Like Johann is a legit vampire, like the one inmate was saying that was talking to Rudy. He's like, I've met a real vampire, and it's him. And it's like, but that's so fascinating to me that we don't know what he said. Peter's not talking. He thinks that she was going to kill him, and he resigned himself to that fact. And then she doesn't. She's like, no, you were going to take me to Johann, because this whole game of hide and seek and catch is getting annoying. Right? I'm glad she doesn't kill him, but I thought for a second she was. And then he keeps saying, everything is going according to plan, but whose plan? Is it mine or Johann's? Whose plan? So, and here's the thing. There's all these talks about plans. The big grand plan, right? And then there's this conversation brought up with Peter of, is it Johann's plan or is it their plan? Right? My thing is, I don't think Johann has a plan. I think Johann's only plan was to legit get rid of all the people that wronged him and his sister and that were involved in that whole process with Bonaparte. I think that's his only goal, is to find Bonaparte, and in some respects, that makes Johann like Tinma. That makes Johann like Tinma, where Johann's trying to hunt down Bonaparte and get rid of this person who's at the root of the problem, which is basically what Johann is doing and what Tinma is doing, and the parallels. But Tinma doesn't know all of this, and Nina's slowly learning all of this, and so it's just, we as the audience, it just makes things so complicated, right? So complicated. But the question, therefore, is, does Johann have a plan aside from, is he going to kill Bonaparte? That seems like it's his plan. But then why do all these other people say, that they're part of Johann's grand scheme of things? Like, we'll talk about Kristoff here in a second. That is a big question. It almost seems in some respects like Johann just gives people enough information and being like, oh, well, formulate your own plan, but that's not mine. And everybody just kind of assumes that theirs and Johann's are lining up when they're really not. It's so fascinating. But Peter, that who's in control, me or him? Johann is very much in control. And she's like, I want to go where Johann is. And I like that the two guards are just like, sure, we have nothing else going on. We're getting paid by the hour. Let's go. Whatever keeps us from going back to the main headquarters, let's do that. So the idea of it being pitch black and you can't escape the massacre. Oh, I like the idea that Eva just sits there and puts the silencer on the gun. Oh my God. And her just slowly revolving it around. Oh my God, that scene. This whole scene in the apartment is amazing. And she's like, what was the point of me pointing you out? I assume that Johann and Kristoff, they recognize each other from Kinderheim, or Kristoff told Johann. The fact they knew each other at Kinderheim is huge, and now makes more sense why, if they did meet up at that hotel, which I'm thinking now that they did. Before I was like, why would Johann care if he met Kristoff at the hotel? And why would he leave him alive if that were the case? Now we know that they both made a pact together at Kinderheim. And so Kristoff, our Opimofo, Kristoff and Johann made a pact or a plan at Kinderheim. Now, back then, Johann tells Kristoff he has a plan, but they're kids, right? They're kids. They make a plan, right? He tells Kristoff his plan. Kristoff goes off and works towards it, and now they meet up again. So before, where it didn't make any sense for them to meet at the hotel and Kristoff to have lived, now it makes all the sense because they've known each other for a long time now. They've known each other for a decade. Makes all the sense in the world. And the way that Kristoff is kind of like this devoted follower of Johann's principles and his nihilism is very much making sense now because they both are products of Kinderheim. Yep. And his whole, like, the moment he, like, throws the book at Eva and tries to take the gun from her, I'm like, oh, the moment he said he was a product of Kinderheim, I'm like, oh, now you are a terrifying character, Kristoff, because you probably are a sleeper agent and could very much, like the mystical Steiner, suddenly attack her and kill her. But Kristoff has so much of an ego and is such a diva that he doesn't just kill her, he has to have his villain monologue, and that gives Tenma enough time to get there. And I think Tenma's going to shoot him. Now, whether he's going to kill him or not, I don't know. I think Tenma's shot him, but I don't think he's killed him. But he might have. He might have killed Kristoff. I don't know. We'll have to see, right? And Eva, of course, is like, if I hadn't pointed out Johann to you, then Martin wouldn't have died. And that's why she's like, that's why I have to kill you because you're part of this, this part of her guilt, right? And she's like, where's Johann? And she's like, I've been watching this apartment for 2 weeks and he's never come here. So why are you here waiting on him? And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, he's like, I don't know. For real. You don't say for realsies to Eva. Eva don't do for realsies. No. And then she shoots him in the ear. Bless. I was like, girl ain't messing around. And she's like, we've known each other for 10 years. And so anyway, he's, he gets there on the ground, my ear. Oh, you'll be fine. Your political career isn't, ruined because of your ear. And then she's like, Kristoff Sievernick. And she's like, I did my homework. Your late father, Ernest, one of the largest financial groups in Frankfurt. So I would have to go back, and when we do the manga review for volume 8, I'm sure I'll be able to go back and talk about the connections there. So I'll go back and do that then. But it would make sense now targeting a financial group if Kristoff's foster father was the head of a financial group as well. Not only because he would probably want to kill Sievernick because he's the foster father, he's took him from Kinderheim, so there's some diabolic things tied there. But it would make more sense why Johann would keep in contact with Kristoff because Kristoff would have connections to all these financial groups, which would include Schubert. So there is some connections there. And then Margot, he'd probably learn about her from that. So things are all connecting together, like the financial groups all being related, Johann having the connection of Kristoff. It's all coming together. It's all starting to make sense, right? It's all starting to add up. Yep. And she's like, you're the heir of that. And of course, Kristoff wants to become ruler of the world and, take it over and take over his father's business. That's what Baby was talking about. He's like, you think you're going to be the heir of your father's business, but that hasn't been decided yet. So he thought he was going to take over the financial group, use it to front roll him into politics and then run the world, however that works. And maybe Johann told him that as a kid. We don't know the full story. I don't want Kristoff to die yet because I want to know more about, his connection with Johann. But at the same time, I'm not sure how much he's going to tell Tenma, if anything. Also, I like how he's trying to distract Eva by talking about his ear bleeding, and he's thinking about what he can throw when he sees the book. And she's like, what happened when I pointed that demon out to you? And he's like, you got it all wrong. He thought he introduced me to Johann, but I've known him for a while. But Peter didn't know that. There is a little part of me that does feel bad for Kristoff, because when he says I was sold on the black market by a merchant, that part I do feel kind of bad about, because I'm like, the idea of children being sold is horrible and horrific on any level, regardless of how they turn out as adults. So that part I sympathize with him, but then he's just so creepy and terrible that you're like, what do we do about that? And he just wants to be like this, dictator's apprentice in a sense. And he's like, Johann and I met at Kinderheim. We met each other and we survived. And so then we have the scene of the 3 kids hiding under the sink, right? That Johann clearly knew where they were, right? Which there's still some kind of like mystery of Johann. Like, how did Johann know to find him under the sink? Like, that part is creepy, right? How do you know to find him there unless he told Kristoff ahead of time, go hide under the sink and I'll come get you when everything's said and done. But maybe these 2 kids followed him and he was like, shit. And so then as the kids were there, he's like, I need you guys to leave, so I'm the only one left. And we'll see. There is something very creepy in what is shown and not shown in this scene. Because it very much, like I said in the reaction, it reminded me, if you've ever watched the original Disney movie Bambi, it's very grim for a Disney movie, especially marketed to kids. It's like, oh, this is grim. But I grew up on like a family farm and we hunt deer, so that movie didn't really desensitize me from anything. I'm like, no, that's pretty much how it goes. I've been deer hunting before. I was like, sorry, Bambi, I know how this, I wasn't surprised when the mom died in Bambi. I was like, no, that's how it goes. I was like, such a desensitized little kid to deer violence. But there's a scene in that movie that is oddly, the mom dying in Bambi is not the most disturbing scene in that movie. It's really not. The most disturbing scene in Bambi is there are 3 pheasants and they are all like hunched down the ground, and it's like pheasant season. There are hunters everywhere. And the 3 pheasants are hunched down the ground and they're freaking out. And the one pheasant's like, we should fly right now. And the other 2 pheasants are like, no, don't fly. And she's like, maybe we can get out of here really quick. And the other pheasants are like, don't fly. And she's like, I can't take it anymore. And she has a panic attack and she flies up in the air. There's a gunshot and then you just see this pheasant's body drop to the ground dead. Most disturbing image as a child watching that movie. I was like, oh shit, she died. Like, it is gruesome. Bambi's mom dying, that happens off screen. You don't even see that. You just hear a gunshot and then she's gone. You don't even see it. That pheasant dying, you see that. And it's like, oh my God. And then everybody freaks out in the woods. But that scene reminded me a lot of with the 3 boys, where the boys are like, we're really hungry and we're scared and we don't hear anything else. And then their Kristoff's character's like, well, go check. But come back and see me, okay? So, we don't know. Johann says they died, so we assume that's the case. But we don't see it, so maybe they ran off. Maybe not. We assume they died because Johann said that there were no survivors except him and Kristoff. But the thing that's so terrifying about that scene here in Monster is that when you see the boys just round the corner and then they disappear, and there's no gore, there's no like sound of a gunshot or anything. They just disappear. And then Johann pops up and he's like, we're the only ones left. And it's like you don't see it. And that's more disturbing than anything you can imagine because our brains kind of fill in the gaps, right? So it's just terrifying. But it does beg the question of, did Kristoff know that Johann was eventually going to come see him? Was Johann testing his faith in him and his loyalty by saying, you go hide under the sink, I'll come get you when it's all said and done. And Kristoff was the only loyal one that waited. Was that a test? Like, we don't know, right? Johann's character is so interesting because I feel like there are 3 separate Johanns. I feel like there is the Red Rose Mansion Johann that we don't know hardly anything about. It's a big old question mark. We know he knows some things about it, but we don't know anything about that Johann. There is that Johann. Then there is child Johann, that we'll call it the 5'11 Johann. 5'11 Johann, we know he starts the massacre. Supposedly he sits on the throne and watches them all kill themselves. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know. We don't know if it's true or not. That's the thing. We have no clue. Like, is that real or is it not real? We don't know. That's kind of the funny thing. We have no clue if that's actually true or not. Nobody confirms it, correct? So we don't know. But we're like, maybe it is. But we know child Johann of 5'11", he meets Kristoff, supposedly there, right? Then we have child Johann that is post 5'11", And that's where him and Nina have been going to the foster families and been killing all of them, or they've mysteriously died. So this is like murder child. We're going to call this murder child Johan here. Then he gets shot by Nina. And then we have like post-bullet Johan. Just a bad way to say it. But Johan, that like after he's been shot and after Tenma heals him, it seems like he lives, and then he goes on this spree of just spreading nihilism and chaos everywhere he goes, and he's separated from Nina, right? And that leads to adult Johan. So the crazy thing is we see it's kind of almost symbolic of in the book, Johan the monster, before the monster meets Johan, it takes on a different form and isn't satisfied with that form until it gets to Johan, and then Johan keeps him, right? So it does make you wonder, like, has Johan's plans changed at each junction? Because he made plans with Kristoff way back when, but like lots of things have happened between now and then. So has Johan's mentality and plans changed since that point? We don't know. So we assume that it probably has, but we're not entirely sure. And then Johan, like, saves Kristoff, and of course you show Kristoff like with the light, you show Johan with the light around him. He's doing what I like about the pose is when Johan is reaching his hand out to Kristoff, it's this underhanded, you see the open palm, like he's accepting Kristoff, like come with me. In the OP where you see Bonaparte, the hand is flipped over and he's like covering your eyes with the hand, like he doesn't want you to see, and the gestures are totally flipped. So I like that. I don't know what that says about Johan versus Bonaparte. It's interesting, but I like how it's done. It's a nice touch, right? And then they're like, what's his plans? Do you want to know? He's like, well, where do I begin? And then he doesn't tell her and say he throws the damn book and takes the gun away. I was like getting us all riled up, thinking we're gonna find shit out, and then no, we don't get that. I'm like, hate it. Absolutely hate it. And then he talks about wanting to be a politician and having all these plans and saying, you know, a politician's face is everything to him. He's like, I'm going to run the world. With Johan's help, the world is going to be mine. It's so fascinating to me because we as the audience, we don't... It's fascinating because Johan doesn't really give us any idea of having a plan except stopping Bonaparte. And even that is kind of not cemented. But everyone seems to think that Johan is going to help with their plan. With like Baby was going to enlist Johan to be their dictator. And Wolf had this plan. And Peter had this plan. And Kristoff has this plan. They all have plans involving Johan. And Johan's supposed to be helping them achieve all of their plans. But the reality is Johan is helping none of them. He's not even bothering, right? He just uses these people and moves on. And they don't even realize they're being used until it's too late. So that's so interesting to me, right? And he's like, what about this ear? He goes on about that ear being like, he's like, I can't be a good politician without a face. I'm like, she didn't shoot your face, dude. She shot your ear. You're lucky, you know, like you just get a prosthetic ear. I don't know what to tell you. He's like, don't ruin our plan. And then we see Tenma. And I loved it, Tenma. And I love she's like, Kenzo. And now Tenma shoots the gun. So the question is did Tenma shoot him or not? I think he shot him, but whether he died or not is the question. My hope is that he didn't. My hope is that when he shot Kristoff, it was in a place that isn't fatal and he could like tend to his wound, get the gun away from him. And then we go from there. But I don't want Tenma to be a killer, which is my problem. So I don't want him to have killed Kristoff. But I'm like, I also don't want Eva to die. So maybe Eva like did this and pushed the gun up and stopped it. We don't know. Damn it. I'm not going to be able to wait very long for episode 66. So yeah. Then we cut back to Peter and Nina. Nina just looks done. She looks so done with the world. Nina's looked done for a while, but she's sitting there like, I just want to see my brother and figure out why the hell he's doing this. My thing is, why can't Johan just wait till Nina gets there? Every time Johan leaves before Nina finds him. I'm like, you want to see your sister so bad, but you keep her at arm's length, and then you always leave before she gets to see you. The fudge. I'm like, damn it. Every time. And so Peter's like, Johan told me that if I showed up, I would tell you where he is and then you'd kill me. What I like about this is that Nina, I personally think that she didn't kill him because of Tinma's influence. Because she knows that Peter is not her end goal. Peter's not her end game. Her end game is finding Johan. And she can't find Johan without Peter. And she wants to save Tinma, and Tinma's told her not to kill anybody. So her and Tinma kind of have very parallel tracks at this point. So what's going to be interesting is she did not kill Peter. Did Tinma kill Kristoff? Because if that ends up being the case, that's going to be interesting. But then again, she didn't have somebody like Eva to rescue in that scenario, so it's a little bit different. But she's like, she's got all of her memories back, and he's like, then why didn't you kill me? And he's like, you must be overflowing with hatred, anger, and grief. And she's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, but I want to find my brother. And she's like, you know what we are, don't you? And he's like, I've heard the story of how you twins were born. There's all this talk about what they are. And like, if they were like these little, we know from Peter's flashback that the twins were supposedly like the new master race, created, but it's like, what does that mean, right? Were they created to be sleeper agents? How does this work? We're like on the cusp. It's like on the tip of our tongues what the answers are and the truth. And this show is just holding it like a carrot on a stick right outside of our reach, but we're so close to getting it. So close. So damn close. We're so close to getting answers, and oh my God. This episode was great. It went through a lot in a very short amount of time. There was a lot of action. There were some answers. We found out who Kristoff is. I'm excited. I don't want any answers about him because I want to go back to the manga and make the connections with the group that was targeted and Kristoff now that we know a little bit more about him. But I'm so curious. Did Tinma end up shooting Kristoff? Did he? We'll have to find out. And how did he save Eva? And what are we going to do about it? Is somebody going to snipe Kristoff from the windows and kill him before Tinma can? Who knows? But I'm really excited to hear your comments down below. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion, and I hope you all had a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm back real soon with more Monster. Bye.